In a world full of noise, some stories whisper instead of shout. This is the story of a girl who thought she'd never belong, and a man who thought his heart had forgotten how to love. Welcome to the house on Willow Lane. The rain had been falling since dawn, tracing silver lines down the cracked windows of St. Mary's orphanage. The children had long since retreated to their rooms, their laughter fading into the low hum of the storm. Only Elena stayed by the window, her chin resting on her knees, eyes fixed on the gate below. 14 years old and already too used to goodbyes. It wasn't that she hated being there. St. Mary's wasn't cruel. It was just temporary. Like every other place she'd been. 5 foster families, 3 schools, 1 certainty, she never stayed long. Something always went wrong. Someone always gave up. When the matron called her name that morning, Elena didn't even turn at first. She was used to being summoned, for chores, for scolding, for paperwork. But the voice had been different this time, quieter, almost nervous. "Elena," said Mrs. Hobbs, adjusting her glasses. "You've been chosen." Elena frowned. Chosen. That word again. It never ended well. The black car outside gleamed under the rain, like an ink stain against the gray street. Standing beside it was a tall man in a dark overcoat, an umbrella in one hand, a leather folder in the other. His face was pale, stern, unreadable, like someone who smiled once a long time ago and forgot how. Mr. Alistair Reed. He didn't shake her hand. He didn't ask how she felt. He just nodded slightly when Mrs. Hobbs introduced them and said, "You have your things ready?" She lifted the small duffel bag that held everything she owned. "This is it." He only replied, "Very well," and opened the car door for her. The ride to Willow Lane was silent except for the steady drumming of rain on the roof. Elena tried to peek at him a few times, but his eyes stayed fixed on the road, his face illuminated now and then by flashes of lightning. There was something haunted about him, not cruel, not cold exactly, but distant, as if he was living in a world behind glass. When they arrived, she stared at the mansion in disbelief. The house was enormous, framed by towering trees and iron gates. Ivy crawled across its walls like veins. The lights inside glowed faintly yellow, but the air felt heavy, untouched. "This is where you live?" she asked, half in awe, half in fear. "Yes," he said simply. "It's quiet. You'll find your room upstairs. Mrs. Dalloway, the housekeeper, will show you around. Dinner is at 7. And then he left her standing in the hall, her shoes dripping on marble floors, as footsteps faded down a long corridor. That night, she couldn't sleep. The room was soft and expensive, lace curtains, a large bed, polished wood, but it felt colder than any orphanage dorm. She thought of the man's face, the way his eyes looked like winter sky. Why would someone like him want a girl like her? She found out soon enough. Over the next few days, she learned that Mr. Reed was a man of strict habits and few words. He rose at 6, read the newspaper over black coffee, worked in his study until late, and hated interruptions. The staff obeyed him with quiet efficiency. Everyone called him sir, even though no one seemed to like him much. He wasn't unkind. He just didn't know how to be anything else. Elena, for her part, was stubborn and restless. She touched what she wasn't supposed to, explored hallways he never entered, and once even sneaked into the music room, a vast space dominated by a grand piano draped in dust and silence. When she pressed one key, the note rang out like a secret escaping. "Don't touch that." His voice had startled her. He was standing at the door, face unreadable, a book in his hand. "Sorry," she said quickly, though her tone wasn't really sorry. He hesitated. "That piano belonged to my wife." She didn't know what to say to that. Later, Mrs. Dalloway told her in hushed tones that Mr. Reed's wife had died nearly 10 years ago. No children. Since then, the house had grown quieter by the year. He's not a bad man, the housekeeper had said softly. Just lost. Elena wasn't sure if that made her feel better or worse. Their days continued like that, cautious, distant, full of small misunderstandings. She was messy, he was meticulous. She laughed loudly, he preferred silence. When he told her to sit properly at dinner, she slouched more out of spite. When she forgot to come home on time, he waited at the door, furious and worried in equal measure. You think I'm your prisoner? She snapped once. You don't even talk to me unless I've done something wrong. And you think rebellion makes you free? He shot back. His voice rose, then fell into a tired sigh. You're a child, Elena. Not everything is a fight. Then stop treating me like one. It was the first time they truly argued, and the first time something cracked between them. That night, she cried quietly under the covers, hating herself for caring what he thought. But she also hated the silence that followed, the emptiness of a house too large for one man and one angry girl. Days passed before they spoke again. And then, one evening, she found him in the music room. He was sitting at the piano, fingers trembling over the keys, playing a melody that sounded like a memory. Slow, sorrowful, beautiful. She stood in the doorway, afraid to breathe. When he noticed her, he didn't stop playing. It was her song, he said after a moment. She wrote it before she fell ill. It's sad, Elena whispered. Yes. Most memories are. Something shifted between them that night, not warmth yet, but recognition. Two broken hearts recognizing each other in the quiet. After that, small things began to change. He started asking about her school, her drawings, her favorite books. She, in turn, learned to read his silences, the way he tightened his jaw when he was worried, or how he lingered at the door when she was upset. They argued still, often, but their words no longer cut. They built something fragile between them, a truce, a rhythm, a beginning. Then came the letter. A former foster mother had written to the orphanage, asking to see her. Curiosity burned inside Elena, but so did fear. She met the woman at a cafe in town, only to find old wounds reopened, empty apologies, promises that meant nothing. She came home angry, hurt, and said things she didn't mean. You're just like them, she told Mr. Reed that night. You'll get tired of me too. He said nothing. Only looked at her with eyes that seemed older than his years. The next morning, she was gone. The police found her hours later at the old train station, shivering under the rain, her bag half-packed. Mr. Reed arrived breathless, soaked, and silent. He didn't scold her. He just put his coat around her shoulders and whispered, "You can leave if you must. But you'll always have a home to come back to." It broke her completely. After that, she didn't run again. Spring came, soft and golden. The house began to change, laughter echoing down the hallways, music from the piano drifting through open windows. Sometimes he'd listen as she played the same melody he once did, turning grief into something living again. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun melt behind the trees, Elena turned to him and said quietly, "You know, it's not so lonely here anymore." He smiled, truly smiled, for the first time she could remember. "No," he said. "It isn't." And for the first time in both their lives, they believed it. Sometimes, family isn't who you're born to, but who stays when everyone else leaves. Thank you for listening to The House on Willow Lane, a story of healing, hope, and home. If you felt something in these quiet moments, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Naratide UG for more stories that speak to the heart.